This is our final class in this mental alchemy series, 6 of 6. And the most important thing is that we remember, I think, kind of why we're here. We learn in the books that we have material alchemists, and those are the historical alchemists that you read about, that then turned into what they call scientists that work with physical matter to change them, with usually with fire. So if we think about going through the fire as we're going through the process of change, with mental alchemy, we're basically doing the same thing. We're taking those challenging aspects in our life, which provide the fire to allow for evolution of our souls. And so if we're in mental alchemy, we're essentially changing that process of us just going through life and allowing life to take us through, and we're taking control over it in order to succeed on the material plane. And with the Church of Light, as we participate, what we are reminded is that our purpose in being here is to eventually use the skills that we are able to use in learning this to do the spiritual alchemy. So it's, we're like taking steps. We're taking our mental steps from learning how to, control our destiny on the physical plane, and then saying, okay, that's helping our soul evolve so that we eventually can, and these are words of C.C. Zane, come into the possession of a golden chariot, in which our soul may wing its heavenly flight through boundless time and eternity. And I think that it's a beautiful way to start the class, to remember that we're learning these steps so that we can eventually have enough control to carry our spirit high. So as you're going through, the question always is, what's our intention with all of this? And it's beautiful to have a community that has an intentionality of not only doing the mental alchemy, but also engaging in the spiritual alchemy and the cooperation with the divine plan. I am having a hard time. There we go. So from the perspective, and some of these slides you've seen before, I'm repeating some of the slides that I've done in previous classes, but for the purpose of really hitting home some of the things we've learned as we've been moving through, and that is the reminder that we are using astrology as our golden key to really dial in, from what I would say a scientific method, how to use our birth charts. So it's important that we're working off of our birth chart report, right? To really understand that we can see the forces that are natural to our soul and the vibratory rate from an astral perspective that our soul vibrates at, and that then we can use the information we're getting from our birth chart report, from the progressions that we learn about, and then also taking a look at the transits that come along and sort of trigger our the energies in our chart. From a vibratory level, we can actually go and take experiential understanding of other vibrations and apply the alchemy. So it's really important that we understand our birth charts, and that we understand that the astrology is key, which is why we spent so much time talking about the astrology and the planets and their energies. And so if we talk about that astral plane, so that would be the plane that is lighter than this physical plane. This is a photo from Stranger Things. Um, I tend to think of our soul and body experience as sort of Play-Doh dropped into the water. So it's malleable, right? It learns from its experiences, but it's going through a plane that is more dense, as sort of like going through water versus going through air. So what we have to remember is, though, that Play-Doh, that soul, um, is already formed, and it has patterns that are already built into it. And when we're in this space of this physical plane, um, there is a significant portion of our soul, which is our subconscious mind, that we don't access. That often it just operates, right? So our birth chart just operates within the physical plane without us consciously doing anything. If we are going to just go through the motions of life, we can do so, and the energies will just work on us, and our soul will go through and sort of subconsciously experience what is happening, and it will continue to engage the same patterns, and often won't go through as much growth as it could if we are consciously noticing, with that little tiny part of our consciousness that is able to notice what our experience is. We can start noticing with that tiny part of consciousness and actually start controlling the actions that we go through. And we'll have then a conscious control over our life instead of just going subconsciously through. So it's a choice that we get to make. And so our souls get to have the benefit of those choices, right? So we're forming this seed, we're growing this seed of spiritual gold that CC Zane talks about. And so it's really important to understand that we are working with an iceberg, and that we've just got this little tip of the iceberg that can go in and alter this astral brain, as you will, if we choose to. So if we look at the organization of this soul, this four-dimensional body, that's the astral body, it operates in four dimensions. So it consists of the mind, right? And it also consists of this physiology that exists outside of our physical physiology, but also within it. And it's really beautiful that we can use our birth chart to see basically all of that within those 12 departments, right? All those different departments tell us these pieces of the astral body, or the soul, that exist, and the energies in relation to life as they exist. So we have, this mind, we have this astral body, and then there's this reaction that happens, right? So as this body goes through the world, in this physical plane, there's reactions that happen to all of those experiences. And that reaction gives the soul the conditioning process and starts building a path of experience. And that path of experience is what the soul takes with it at the end of the physical life, right? So what we have to understand is that, and the nature of poverty and failure, this is taken directly from the lessons. Um, uh, what we come to understand is it's these energies that show up if you have your birth chart report. Yours will have bubbles like this in the different houses, and the power distribution among the houses, the power distribution amongst the signs, and amongst the planets are going to tell us what our experience from a basic perspective is going to be unless we alter it through our conscious choices. So it's important to understand your birth chart report and where all of this energy fits. Because if you're looking to gain a balance, right, then we notice where do we have less energy? Where do we want to build energy into our chart? Where do we want to gain a balance? Where do we have an overabundance of energy? And is it discordant or is it harmonious? And if it's discordant, then that's where we start looking at where we want to alchemize. And so, same is true of disease. I like to put dis-ease because, of course, it's just disease is just our body's not at ease, right? What's really fascinating is that where a thought element, right, where a planet is, where a thought element is in the context of your chart and the signs is going to tell you what is being assimilated into the astral body. So our astral body corresponds with our physical body, and those energies that exist in the different places in your chart and that um, you experience through your body, they can be identified based upon your chart. And so if you're having a knee ache, you can look at, okay, well, what is controlling that? You know, if I have bowel issues repetitively. So really understanding what exists in your chart in relation to your body and how that works together is going to help you even address illness uh, and come up with alchemy that alchemizes not only your mental experience, but also the experience of your body. So, chapter 9 talks about the nature of poverty, failure, and disease, and the discordant compounds, and as they manifest as poverty, failure, or disease. And what's beautiful about the Church of Light and also the chart reports that we're able to generate is we can actually see the discordance, the level of discordance, and then we can go in and say, okay, how do we want to or how can we alchemize that based upon the guidance? So when we better understand how all of this comes together, we can actually recondition through the use of alchemy, and then we can then essentially take the aspects that we have and move the energy into more acceptable and constructive channels from a physical level, so we can manifest that abundance, success, and health. What's beautiful about being able to do that is once you do that, then you take a lot of pressure off of your physical experience, and you can spend a lot more time being able to focus then onto that next step of spiritual growth. So in identifying the cause of difficulty, of course, you don't have to have astrology, right? People do mental alchemy from many different perspectives. You can have psychoanalysis. Of course, you can also just have careful observation, or you can use your birth chart. And when we use our birth chart, it just gives us such a clear visual of our chemistry, our astral chemistry. So the steps of mental alchemy that we've been working you through are, first, we're learning the mental chemistry of the person. And really, the mental chemistry is the chemistry of all of our body, because our mind is what controls every aspect of how our body moves and exists. A lot of it, like I said, is subconscious, but it's still the mental chemistry of your astral body runs your entire body from a physical perspective. So as you learn this mental chemistry, an easy way to do so is by learning the astrology and learning your birth chart. You begin to then say, okay, well, what can I do to address some of the discordance that I go through in my life? So then you start understanding the how to put the antidotes in, how to do the conversion. And that's our next step. And we've provided handouts to you to work you through the process of how to find antidotes and start addressing them. We've given you some ideas of how to add particular thought food in. And then the next step, which really is the most challenging step, the first two steps are the easy steps. The next step is continuously applying the mental alchemy and practicing, practicing, practicing. I'm sure every single person here has tried to engage something new and healthy in their life that they haven't done before, and noticed the challenge of starting new habits, right? Or noticed how difficult in a busy lifestyle it is to meditate, or sometimes even just to eat healthy. But there's no difference in all of these experiences, which is that we have built habits, and we've built mental neurological pathways, and we come into this life with pathways already built by our soul, experiences already built by our soul, and that experience and the subconscious response is already there. So what is the way that we do mental alchemy? Well, if we want to change, right, the alchemy is to the transmute or to change. What we really need to do is have conscious awareness and attention. That's the first key. And the second is have an intention, a deliberate focus. You can have an attention and intention, but if you don't spend the time to do it, then it's like my daughter is a gymnast, right? And if she were just to learn about gymnastics on a PowerPoint, then that doesn't make her a gymnast, right? So she practices, 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 and then says, oh, okay, well, that's a back handspring. Now I have to learn how to do it, right? And for her, it's trial and error, right? You don't always get the back handspring correct, but the only way to learn how to do it is to do it. So what is, we've done 6 classes, right? But 6 classes does not create mental alchemy in your life. It just teaches you how to do it. And so the key is from they call it neuroplasticity, right? But neuroplasticity is a great way for us to understand from a brain perspective really how our soul also evolves. And so as our brain is able to rewire itself, our soul also gets rewired in at the same time. So what is recognized by our books is that you can see through the history of mankind how being able to change the experience allows us to change our life. And so really um, meditation, visualization, those sorts of things, um, and attention and intention are so important. I am not an expert in neuroplasticity. I pulled some information from others that are in order to better show visually how this works. But so every thought, feeling, and action that we engage triggers these thousands of neurons to join together and they form the neural networks. And this is the conditioning, we call it conditioning, that conditions our soul, right? So as we repeat the patterns of behavior, these pathways start to happen. So you can imagine, a trail that lots of people walk on, and you're walking on it. And then there's another trail that not very many people walk on to that may be a better trail for you, but it's not as easy to go that way because it's not as well traveled. So in order sometimes for us to change, we actually have to go on a much less traveled trail and forge the way, and it's a little more difficult. And um, so we have to be very intentional about it when we do it, because we already have these pathways built and our soul is subconsciously going along in the world, reacting to transits and other energies and experiences. And so what we have to do is we have to build these new pathways. And you can see here, they show how, um, the pathways are built. And the key is that you have to take that less well beaten path many, many, many times in order to make that the main path. And then the grass sort of grows over that old pathway. And so what we want to do in our practice is go over that new pathway as many times as we can. And from the perspective of mental alchemy, that's noticing these experiences that you're having that are related to those discordant energies. And then we'll talk more about how we need to alter our perception of those experiences, so the next time they come around, the new perception exists instead of the old conditioning that make us react the same way over and over and over again, that then bring us poverty, failure, disease, etc. So it's that conditioning energy, and of course this again is the verbiage from our books. It's that conditioning energy that builds our soul and experience and its perception of existence. And so when we look at our chart, we can say, what is the conditioned energy that we came into the world with? If it's discordant, so in harmony, that would be negative harmony here, right? If it's negative, then we have work that we can do. And I would say if you have a harmonious space in your chart, those are the spaces that you can use as an example of how to engage harmony with the discordant spaces. So we all have discordance and we all have harmony, and we learn from the harmonious space how to address the discordance. And the conditioning energy, we call it pleasure and pain, right? So it's the pain that is related to the discordance. And one of the keys that I wanted to bring in here from chapter 9 is that laughter is such an important piece of learning how to recondition. And these are words from CC Zane. that it might seem strange that an individual could find pleasure in its own discomfort were it not for understanding the process of conditioning. And that is really what we talk about when we say we have to laugh at ourselves, laugh at these challenging experiences, right? So it is the asset of being able to laugh at the challenge that we experience in the world and the things that don't go exactly the way we want to, that will allow us to um, do a much better job of alchemy. The laughter, the way that it engages um, uh, a natural harmonious response in your body is a very, very easy way to start building in the reconditioning. And so it actually reconditions the thought elements. And so one of the keys is that we don't take our affairs too seriously. The more seriously we take them and the more attached we get to the discordance, the less able we'll be able to laugh and the less able we'll be able to alchemize the conditioning energy built in. So the humor is what we can use, and it's just a huge reminder that that's such a key piece. And so as we're going through and as you're doing your experiencing of this and you're going through and saying, okay, how do I do this alchemy? Remember, it's supposed to be a fun process and it's supposed to give you something of enjoyment that you can do in your life to address the discordance. And so what's important is that the conditioning happens through volume. So think about the worst experience that you've had in your life, right? That is a very strong volume of conditioned discordant energy. So what's important is that the same volume of energy is used to recondition. So that intention and attention, the more intention that you have, the more attention you can provide in the reconditioning is the key. So, and the more you can use your new experiences to form the harmonious compounds, the better your reconditioning is going to be. So remember that this new element that we're adding in has to be added with a feeling of energy of greater intensity than what was conditioned into your soul originally. So this is engaging a level of excitement and energy, of change and evolution to the greatest extent you possibly can in order to move forward in a new pathway. So those pathways, of course, if they're very deep, then we need to have deeper pathways in a different direction, right? These are just reminders that we have 10 thought element families to work with, and they correspond to the 10 planets, and that all of them are modified by the signs that they're in. And so what we need to remember is that, so if we have our sun in Aries, then our sun's perspective is I am power, right? Because Aries is I am and the sun is power, right? So if the moon is in Taurus, then it's, I have what I have is domestic, right? So if we start to put the I ams and the I have and the I thinks in front of the energies related to the planets, then we can much better understand our planets, right? So if we write this stuff out So if you have a journal and you write out what energy of this series relates specifically to the thought element of your planet, then you're going to have a really interesting story to tell, right? You're going to have 12 sentences that tell you about yourself right there. And that is a great place to start. So Yvette did a class that dialed that in a little bit deeper. I think that was class 1 or class 2. So if you go back to those classes, you can see a little bit more about how to do that. But just using this slide, you can go and write that into a journal. And that will start you on your way to understand better how your conditioning began. And then again, of course, we'll go into it a little further. Each one of these planets is in a department, right? That contains the energy of the series, right? So the departments are the 12 houses, and those are the departments of life. So as you, go through and see that those departments of life have a story to tell about you based upon what planets you have there. So we have these uh, planets, and they exist, and they have a story to tell, and then they start to relate to each other through aspects, right? And it's these aspects. So our planets are not discordant or harmonious just without any experience, without any conditioning. They just are, right? They just exist there. And then it's the conditioning of how our planetary energies relate to each other that cause the way that we then perceive the world, right? That's that conditioning. And it's the aspects in our chart, whether it's your oppositions or your squares or your trines, that tell you what is that base experience. And we have 10 different combinations of aspects. We've talked about aspects in past classes. The materials that you received also has more information about those aspects, but it's those aspects that tell us what conditioning we have built into our bodies, into our soul bodies, and also into our physical bodies. And we come in with a certain conditioning, and then as we go through life, that conditioning either gets deeper in those ruts, right? We get deeper and deeper into the same conditioned ruts, or we evolve new pathways through choice. And it's that choice that we are talking about today. And it's the tension in the compound that gives us those experiences in life, right? It causes us to judge things. It causes us to decide good or bad. It causes us to decide what our perspective of an experience is, and how and again, sometimes this experience, this conditioned experience, isn't something we're even aware of, right? It can be going on in our subconscious without us even consciously aware. So what we need to remember is that conditioning doesn't happen without feeling. It's the feeling that causes the pathway to get deeper. Okay, so a thought exists. Thought, think about the planet, thought element, right? It's just your planet. And then it's the experience of the compound, which is the conditioned feeling, which gives the process of going down the pathway and causing the deeper ruts. We'll call it the ruts, right? Which is the conditioned experience. So it's that quality in the volume of the feeling, the strength of that feeling, that determines how much conditioning happens. And so if the feeling is apathetic, probably not a lot of conditioning, right? But if the feeling is strongly opposed or strongly in favor, then strongly pain or strongly pleasure, then that is going to determine the pathway. And I wish I would have known this when I was a lot younger. That's what I can say about that. So it is that feeling then that decides how we act. And it's how we act in relation to the world that we then gain our experience. And so I like to put it into just a couple of words to help us better understand it. I write this down in my journals to remember the process of creation. Think, feel, act, have. And then when I have that new experience, then I think about it and I feel about it and act and I have. So it's literally this repetitive cycle that's happening all the time. Think, feel, act, have. Think, feel, act, have. Think, feel, act, have. And what we can do is we can't necessarily control our thoughts. We can notice our emotions. And we can use the process of alchemy to perceive those emotions and then decide how, if we are going to go down the same route or if we're going to change a different route. Sometimes I'll notice a feeling coming up, like I'm getting exactly Joao. Yare Vahe, right? Um, so what I'll do is I will notice a feeling, right, come up, and I'll think, okay, the next thing that's going to happen is I'm going to act, and that is going to give me what I get from the world, right? So sometimes I'll just laugh at my anger, right? So sometimes I'll just be like, oh, you're doing it again, Bridie, doing it again. Good job. You know, you've got this conditioned energy come up. Good job. Ha ha ha. Right. So sometimes that's the only thing you can do, right? Because getting angry at oneself for having conditioned energy come up is the opposite of what we're being taught in mental alchemy, right? Because we need to have a positive experience that counteracts that experience that is the discordance. So getting angry at a discordant response is just more discordance, right? So it's not the easiest thing to do, but as we practice it, we can, and then our actions start to evolve. And that's a way to engage mental alchemy without actually having to do anything other than noticing, right? So if we remember the think, feel, act, have, and we remember it in relation to what we're taught in chapter 9, which is what is the cause of poverty, failure, and disease, right? We can then do a much better job of doing what we have been trying to teach in these 6 classes, which is how to use the birth chart, how to use our situations that have conditioned us, that we can remember, right, in our conscious mind, and then how to take those two and put them together and say, okay, well, what do we do, with this now? We know these are the experiences we've had. This is the conditioning that we've lived through. Here's our birth chart that explains what it is, that the energies that we came into this life with, right? And the energies that are our base energies of conditioning. And then, we can go and say, what do we do with that? And we've talked about these in these last classes, especially class 4 and 5, how to engage this process. And the worksheet that you received has the actual process of how to go to your birth chart and identify situations where you've had conditioning, and then pick one of those situations and then figure out what department of life and what aspects you're working with, then what planetary energies or thought elements are in those aspects, and then what are the antidotes that you can use. So that worksheet actually works you through how to find situations, how to match it up with your birth chart, and then how to go through the process of really identifying, okay, this is the antidote. Your reference guide, then you can go and say, okay, well then now what do I do? I've figured out that Venus, is what I need to use, right? Or the social energy is what I need to use. And the reference guide actually has tidbits of how to then use the energies of those thought elements to apply it in the alchemy. So hopefully you enjoy playing with that and working through that. And the antidotes, I just thought I would bring those up, are, of course, the key. And when it comes to power, the sun doesn't have an antidote to it. So if you have like lots of power, right, and you're like, I'm too powerful for the situation, you want to have power to use alchemy. So you don't want to reduce your power. What you want to do is you may want to change the way that that power is expressed. So that comes from self-esteem and understanding how to enjoy, right? Bring enjoyment to the powerful experience instead of pain to that powerful experience. So what that laughter piece, if power is your issue, the laughter piece is a key to remember there. With all of them, it's important to bring as much power as possible, right? And that's especially true when you are alchemizing for Saturn. You want to have a lot of power to alchemize for that safety element, right? So that's why you have social and power here, because you're going to want to have a lot of bring as much power to this social element to alchemize for that safety piece as possible. Also, it's important with all of these to understand that there's an intellectual key that comes into this, and that is that intentional piece, right? So it's really understanding. The more you understand these energies, and the more you understand, okay, what does aggressive mean, right? What does a religious mean? What does safety mean? What does domestic mean? From an experiential perspective, not only can you help yourself do mental alchemy, but to the extent that you in the future want to help other people engage in mental alchemy, really understanding the different ways that you can use these pieces is just important in your ability to I don't know, how do I say this? Be creative, right? The more you understand about them, the more creativity you can use in applying them in different ways. And you know, um, maybe social means not just like going out with friends. Maybe it's like engaging in um, uh, uh, social awareness, or maybe it's going to the movie. There's lots of different ways in which these can express themselves, and the world is made up with so many different opportunities. So it's what are the opportunities that we can engage through all of these experiences. So what is beautiful about this is as you start to apply the antidotes, what we'll learn is if you're not applying the right antidote, then what you're doing may or may not work. That's kind of like there's certain energies that may sometimes work together and sometimes don't. But when you're applying the antidote appropriately, the attraction of the energy to its antidote is going to be strong. So there's a strong attraction between the energy and its antidote here. And so what's great about that is when you are applying it, it's going to work because there is the attraction there. So you'll know you got it right because it will work well. And it's not going to take struggle for you to apply the antidote. So just remember that the more you can be creative and the more you can sort of feel it out, the answer is going to come to you. And you'll know it when you have it because it will be strongly attracted. And again, this sort of comes back to the laughter piece that we talked about, that you might have to artificially associate things to start with, right? When we start building the habits, the new habits, it's not going to feel like the old conditioning, right? So when we do it, it's like if you've never gone out with friends, right? Say you have like such a strong safety conditioning that you're like, I don't go out of my house, right? But that's very discordant for your experience. When you first go out and have coffee with that new person, it may feel artificially created. And it's just that the conditioning is, you're just sort of forging that new pathway, right? So play with it. Again, this is supposed to be an enjoyable, experimental experience. So think of yourself as this scientist, right? We're alchemists, this scientist who's trying these different new things to create these beautiful new compounds. And so just notice that after the certain amount of practice of applying this antidote over and over and over again, the new train of thought is going to start really feeling more normal, right? And then the more normal it feels, the more you're going to realize I have a new life, right? I've created a new pathway. Now I automatically go out for coffee instead of staying home because that's my new pathway. And the reason I'm saying that, of course, is because I'm talking about Saturn and Venus. So that's the antidote that I'm applying right now. But the more you can try to enjoy it, the more you can notice the enjoyable parts about the new experience, the better conditioning you're going to create in order to forge this new life, right? So the key is, what can I find enjoyable in this experience? What can I be grateful about in this new experience? Even if it's just, oh, wow, like this is weird for me. Haven't done this, before. Like, what is new here that I can notice? All of those things. Anything you can do to make the new experience pleasant and enjoyable, even if it's just noticing, the little kid over in the corner playing with his trucks that you wouldn't have been able to see if you'd stayed home. Whatever it is you can notice to say, okay, I'm reconditioning. We are intentionally reconditioning ourselves, right? Laughter, enjoyment, creativity, and when we cultivate this harmonious experience, it automatically reconditions that discordance, and it brings you the opposite of the discordance. And it will just happen. You don't have to say, you know, you don't have to try beyond the reconditioning. It's just going to come about for you if you just keep doing applying the antidotes and just doing the reconditioning. What is really important is that we understand that there's two pieces to the way in which conditioning happens: resemblance and contiguity. And it took me a while to understand this, so hopefully I do a better job of really sort of dialing in. So thought factors unite in two ways. Either a situation resembles another situation, right? So like the dog barked today at me, tomorrow the dog barks at me. Those are two situations that resemble each other, right? The other is contiguity, meaning they happen one thing after another, right? The dog barks at me. I walk past the dog, the sprinkler hits me, right? And if every day the dog barks at me and then the sprinkler hits me, then those two things I will relate to each other. I'll relate dog bark and sprinkler, right? So those are the ways in which our brain relates the conditioning. So my body remembers a dog barking. I have a feeling about it. That's the resemblance piece, right? Or the dog barks at me. I have a fear that I'm going to be hit by the sprinkler. That's the contiguity. So hopefully I did an okay job of that. It's just really important that a likeness or unlikeness is the resemblance, right? And then one thing happens after another, the contiguity. And so what we have to do is notice that if something resembles something else and we have a discordant perception of that, we have to recondition our thoughts about the thing that resembles the thing. And if we relate something to another thing in happenstance, then what we have to do is change what happens. So then I change, okay, dog barks, sun shines, right? Similarity in sequence. Great. I love it. Yes, same thing. So then what we want to think about is not dog barks get hit by sprinkler, but dog barks, sun shines on me, it's beautiful, and I get a nice suntan. So we have to change, those two things, and we can do that just by trying to live it out our experience. And that's not the easiest way to do it. Or we can do it through visualization of past experiences and then apply antidotes in those visualizations. And what is really cool about our mind is our minds don't know the difference between us experiencing something real time in the physical environment and our visualizing something of experience. So I can be sitting in a room, a dark room, and visualize myself sitting in the sun, and my mind thinks that I'm sitting in the sun. And so what we can do is we can use visualization to actually create experience and do alchemy in a manner where we train ourselves before we have to go out into the world and actually experience the world. So we can either wait for the world to come to us, or we can go to the world and retrain ourselves. We have really good comments coming in, just so everybody knows, about different ways and the way that people have come up with terms to say the same thing that I'm saying. So take a look at that, and I really appreciate everyone's comments. So again, we've just gone through all of these videos, right? And Yvette just knows you can go through and, watch all of these videos, and you will not have done any mental alchemy, and you'll have done no experience, because just by watching a video does not make mental alchemy. So what we're going to do now is actually do some mental alchemy, so that we can end our last class on, and then after we do some mental alchemy, then we'll give ourselves a chance to ask questions and talk a little bit about what we might do in the future as a group related to mental alchemy. But if you could please, I should say, I invite you all, because this is yours, not mine, and I'm not going to direct you. I'm just guiding here. If I invite all of you to find a place where you can visualize, and usually visualization is done better with your eyes closed, because we're going to be coming up with some mental images outside of our physical experience. And so if everyone can just lower your gaze if it's uncomfortable to close your eyes, or close your eyes if that works for you. Find a comfortable place. You do not have to sit in any sort of erect meditative pose. Again, what we're doing with mental alchemy is finding the most comfortable, most enjoyable space that we can to create something that reconditions us into an enjoyable experience. So the invitation always is, don't ever do visualization or attempt mental alchemy in a discordant space or in a discordant mental space. Go laugh for a couple of hours or something before you do it, or, go watch your favorite comedy show and then come back and do it. So hopefully I've given you enough enjoyment in this class to put you in a good space to close your eyes and sit back. And we're going to bring ourselves in our mental mind, to a recent experience that you felt was somewhat discordant. So on a level from 1 to 10, let's go below 5, right? So, maybe somebody cut us off on the road or something like that. And in this discordant experience, find one that you felt that your reaction was not what you wanted it to be, right? That later you were like, I could have handled that better. Okay. If you have that, I mean, maybe some of us don't have anything like that. That's not me. So I can easily find one where I could have handled that better. So let's go into that experience and notice, as an outside observer, just breathe and notice there's this movie in your mind that you can see of this experience. And notice who or what's there. Maybe it's not a who, maybe I dropped a cup on your foot or something, and it's not even a person, right? But if it's a person, notice who's there. Notice the bodily attitudes and the bodily feelings that you have going on, and just breathe. And know that your body is here breathing in a very comfortable, enjoyable space. and that this visualization is here in your mind to help train your mind. And so you're sitting in a safe space while your mind may be going to somewhere that you feel a little less comfortable. And if you ever feel so uncomfortable in the experience, you can always come back to your breath. And I just invite you to just watch the experience happen. So from the time it started till the time it ended, and notice what was said and what was done and how you felt and the discordance of it. And just breathe as you watch that. And then think about what energy is there. Is it aggressive? Is it domestic? Is it powerful? Is it a safety? Is it intellectual? Are you overthinking things? Are your feelings hurt? What is it? And then notice, what could you have done better, do you think? How could you have changed the experience by acting differently or responding differently? Or what could you have tuned into in order to have the experience have gone differently? And just play with it. What would have happened if I would have done this? Or what would have happened if they would have done this? Or, what would have happened if this would have happened? Just noticing and just breathing and noticing. So go back to the beginning of that imagery then and play it out differently. And as you play it out differently, notice how the experience evolves differently. And how, when you get to the end result, what you have coming out of that experience is different than what you had coming out of the original experience. So then if you take this past experience and you project it into a potential future event. So say you meet a new person, or say you meet the same person in a similar experience, right? Or say you meet the same object, maybe it's just an object in a similar experience. And you come into that space and the same things happen, because of course we can't control the other things in the world. We can't control the other people in the world. The transits come around as they come around. We can't control all the energies that happen around us. All we can notice is how we think, how we feel, and how we act. And so let's make a brand new future experience where we come into that same space and we come in with a enjoyable, joyful, excited perception of life. And the same thing happens. And our body conditioning wants to maybe do something. And we notice that and we go, wait, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to do this instead. And how that new life experience is playing out for us. How our relationship with that department of life then is different. How our relationship with the person or the thing is different. how our relationship with the greater world is different. And it's these basic steps, just the practice that we just did over and over and over. That's how we change our life. That's how we take the nature of poverty, failure, and disease and turn it into success and enjoyment and health. And then as we're there, we notice, wow, look at us in cooperation with the rest of the world, and look at how we can teach others, be with others, experience others, and experience the universe in a manner that we spiritually evolve. We don't just physically evolve, but we spiritually evolve in a manner that brings us balance and harmony with this divine plan as we move along in this soul journey. Just breathing into that and noticing that, and just allowing this experience of mental alchemy and this application to be one of those experiences that helps us recondition our life. These baby steps of visualization and reconditioning. Taking a couple of more breaths, enjoying it, laughing at it, loving it, really letting it seep in. Notice it's a new pathway. You're forging a new path on this journey, and you just took a major step along that new path in this journey. And it only took you like 10 minutes. So as we move back into the space of current physical existence, out of our visualization, notice how that makes you feel in this space. It not only helps you recondition the pathways that you're building in your mind, but it will recondition every moment of experienced feeling in your heart, in your body. So it's been a beautiful experience with all of you. Uh, I don't think that Yvette and I can thank you enough for being here. And I think we can also thank each other too. We've really enjoyed doing this together. And just a reminder that contributions, if you find this experience something that's worthwhile monetarily, light.org, you can donate there. You can also join the organization, the nonprofit, and start, doing your own teaching eventually as you study. The Academy of Hermetic Arts is the teaching platform for the books. And uh, it's just a really, really cool college. So look forward to enjoying more of this with all of you as we move forward together. And just again, thanks for being here.